I went into that asylum expecting to make a horror documentary. Instead, I became part of one. I still don't know what was real, what was hallucination, or if I ever actually made it out. But there's one thing I do know: something followed me home. Would you investigate a haunted asylum? Let me know in the comments. It was supposed to be just another project, a documentary, a few weeks of filming in an abandoned building, and then back to the safety of the studio. But Blackwood Asylum, it was never just a story. It never stayed within the walls of the footage, and it would never let go of me. I'd heard the rumors before. Every small town has them. People said the asylum was haunted, that the spirits of the tortured patients still roamed the halls, that the place was cursed. I've heard those stories since I was a kid. I'm a documentary filmmaker, though, and my job is to separate fact from fiction. A story like this, with its local folklore and dark history, was the perfect subject for a film. I didn't expect to walk into a nightmare. I parked my van in front of the tall iron gates, the sign reading Blackwood Asylum barely visible through the overgrowth. It had been decades since the place was closed, shut down after an investigation revealed years of abuse and disappearances. The town had moved on, but the asylum remained, a decaying relic from a past too ugly to be acknowledged. I set up the cameras in front of the building as the sky began to darken. My crew, just a couple of guys with cameras, a sound technician, and me, stood near the van, unsure of how to even begin the task of documenting something so oppressive. The wind rustled the leaves around us, a whispering sound that seemed to echo across the abandoned landscape. It was the kind of chill that dug into your bones, the kind of air that made the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. But it wasn't anything I hadn't felt before. We walked through the main entrance, a set of rotting double doors that creaked as I pushed them open. The first thing that hit me was the smell, musty, like old books and mildew, mixed with something faintly metallic. I turned on the camera and began the introduction. Welcome to Blackwood Asylum, a place that was once home to thousands of patients in desperate need of care, until the doors were shut forever after scandal and mystery surrounded the institution. Our mission today is to uncover what really happened behind these walls and what still lurks here. I paused for a moment, glancing over my shoulder. The others were still standing near the entrance, looking around nervously. I could tell they weren't as eager to begin as I was. Maybe I wasn't the only one who felt like there was something in the air, but I shrugged it off. I was a professional. The inside of the asylum was like stepping into another world, a world that had been left to rot, untouched by time, except for the constant drip of water somewhere in the distance. The walls were covered in peeling paint, the floors cracked and uneven. The old furniture was abandoned, covered in dust, with no one around to move it. There were rooms I dared not step into, the atmosphere so thick it felt like something would reach out and grab me if I moved wrong. We began our tour of the place, filming the desolate hallways, the rusted medical equipment still in place, as if waiting for patients who would never come. Each room felt like it had a story to tell, but none of them were willing to speak. It was then that I first heard it. The whispers. First, I thought it was just the wind, the building settling, or the sound of our footsteps echoing through the vast emptiness. But then I realized it wasn't just random noise. It was too clear, too deliberate. Did you hear that? I asked, lowering the camera for a moment. My crew looked at each other, the unease spreading like wildfire. Maybe it's just the wind, my sound guy, Brian, said, but his voice lacked conviction. No, I said, almost to myself. That was a voice. We all fell silent, straining our ears, but the whispers were gone, slipping into the shadows like they had never been there. We kept moving, filming as we went, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. We ventured deeper into the building, the air growing colder with every step. The temperature dropped sharply in a way that wasn't natural. It wasn't the chill of a typical old building, where drafts run through cracks in the walls. No, this felt different. It felt like the very air itself had turned against us. As we reached the old patient ward, the whispers returned. This time, they were louder, more distinct. My camera's night vision kicked in, casting long, dark shadows across the peeling walls. "Is someone here?" I called, my voice trembling ever so slightly. I felt ridiculous. I wasn't supposed to be scared. But there was something in the air that didn't feel right. The sound of footsteps echoed from the corridor behind us, slow and deliberate. We turned, but no one was there. "Let's just keep moving," I said, more to reassure myself than anyone else. I gestured toward the hallway ahead. "Let's get some shots of the old treatment rooms." The others nodded, reluctantly following me down the hallway. We walked in silence, the sound of our footsteps amplifying in the tense atmosphere. The first room we entered was a small patient's room, with an old bed covered in sheets that had turned yellow with age. The walls were lined with rusted medical charts, all fading with time. The door behind us slammed shut with a sudden force, making us all jump. "Did anyone close that?" Brian asked, his voice tight. "No," I whispered, stepping toward the door. It was jammed, as if something on the other side was holding it shut. I pushed it with all my strength, but it wouldn't budge. I could hear it now. Faint voices, distant but clear. Whispers, like people speaking just out of sight. The hairs on the back of my neck stood on end. Something wasn't right. "I think we need to leave," one of the crew members said, his voice barely above a whisper, but it was already too late. The door cracked open with a loud groan, revealing the hallway beyond. And as we stepped into the darkness, the shadows seemed to move, shifting and twitching, almost alive. I had to push ahead, keep filming, keep going. But deep down, I felt it. We weren't alone. I wanted to believe it was just the wind, just the shifting of an old building, the creak of broken wood and rusted hinges. But I knew better. We moved cautiously through the darkened hallway, my camera light casting long, eerie shadows on the walls. The air felt heavier now, thick with something I couldn't quite define. My breath fogged in front of me, though it wasn't cold enough for that to happen. I checked the time, 11:42 p.m. Too early for my nerves to be this frayed. Brian was walking ahead, his microphone raised, scanning the empty corridors for any sounds we might have missed. The others stayed close behind, our steps slow and deliberate. The hallway stretched ahead of us, impossibly long, with doors lining each side: patient rooms, examination rooms, isolation wards. Each one a relic of the asylum's brutal history. Then I heard it again. A voice, not whispers this time. A clear, distinct voice, muffled, but close. "Help me." I stopped dead in my tracks. The others froze too. "You heard that, right?" I whispered. Brian nodded, his face pale in the dim light. "Yeah, that wasn't the wind." The voice had come from one of the rooms to our left. A patient's room, the door slightly ajar. My stomach twisted into knots. Every instinct told me to turn around and leave, but I forced myself to move forward, camera in hand. I pushed the door open. Inside, the room was empty. A small cot, rusted metal frame. An old wheelchair in the corner, its wheels crusted with time. The walls were covered in scratches, long, deep grooves carved into the peeling paint. I stepped inside, sweeping my light across the walls. The scratches weren't random. They formed words. "Make it stop. Please let me out. He's coming." The words crawled up the walls, overlapping each other, growing more frantic, more desperate. My throat tightened. Brian took a step back. "We need to leave this room." I agreed. But then the wheelchair moved. Not a wobble, not a slow tilt. It lurched forward as if shoved by unseen hands that we bolted out of the room. We hurried down the hallway, our nerves fraying with each passing second. I tried to keep my breathing steady, but the deeper we went, the more the hallway seemed to shift. "This isn't right," one of the crew members whispered. "The entrance should be this way." But it wasn't. The doors we had walked through were gone. The asylum had changed. "No, no, no," Brian muttered, shaking his head. "We're just turned around, that's all. We'll find it." I wanted to believe him. I really did, but I could feel something watching us. Then footsteps. Slow. Measured. Coming from behind us. We all turned at once. The hallway was empty. The sound stopped. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to keep moving. "Let's just keep filming. We'll find our way back." I barely believed my own words. We pressed forward, and that's when we found it. A rusted metal door at the end of the corridor. Different from the others. Older. "This isn't on the blueprint," I murmured. It had no handle, just a faded sign, barely legible beneath decades of dust and decay. Restricted. "Do not enter." I turned to Brian. "You still rolling?" He nodded. I raised my hand to push against the door, and it opened on its own. The air inside was different. Stale. Thick. As if it had been sealed for a long, long time. Beyond the doorway was a staircase, leading downward. "This isn't a good idea," someone whispered behind me. I hesitated. But then a sound from below. A single, ragged breath. Not ours. Something waiting. I didn't want to go down those stairs. Everything in me screamed to turn around, to leave, to pretend we hadn't found this place. But something about that breath, that slow, deliberate exhale from the darkness, held me in place. I glanced at Brian. His grip on the camera was tight, knuckles pale beneath his skin. "We're already here," he murmured, more to himself than anyone else. "We might as well see what's down there." I nodded. Then we descended. The air was damp. Each step sent a slow, aching groan through the old wooden staircase. The deeper we went, the colder it became. Not just a temperature drop. It was a lifeless cold, the kind that clung to your skin and buried itself deep in your bones. The bottom. We found ourselves in a narrow, low-ceilinged hallway. The walls were brick, stained with something dark. The smell of mildew and rusted metal filled the air. "Jesus," someone whispered. The corridor stretched ahead, lined with iron-barred doors, cells. Not patient rooms, cells. This was no ordinary wing of the asylum. I raised my flashlight, sweeping the beam across the corridor. Beyond the bars, rusted chains hung from the walls. Shackles, restraints, old medical tools scattered across the floor. Some of them still had dried remnants clinging to the metal. And then we saw the carvings, all along the walls, inside the cells. Deep gouges in the brick, made by desperate hands. No escape. He watches. The doctor will come. Brian swallowed hard. What the hell happened down here? A chill ran down my spine. And then a metallic clang echoed through the corridor. We all jumped, my heart slamming against my ribs. Where did that come from? I whispered. Brian aimed his camera toward the far end of the hallway. There, at the very last cell, one of the rusted chains swung gently, as if it had just been touched. N01 had gone near it. N01 had moved it, that I felt my breath hitch. We were not alone down here. And then, from the darkness beyond the bars, a voice, low, raspy. "You're not supposed to be here." The flashlight flickered. The air turned suffocating. Then came the footsteps, not ours. Heavy, deliberate. Coming from the darkness, we backed away, my pulse hammering. My light trembled as I swung it toward the far end of the corridor. The last cell. And then I saw it. A figure stood just beyond the bars. Tall, gaunt, its face obscured by shadows, but its eyes, hollow, sunken pits, locked onto mine. A sharp, violent crack rang out as the cell door burst open, swinging wide. The chains rattled. Then it moved, not walked, glided. Rushing toward us too fast, too unnatural. The camera light cut out, and the darkness swallowed us whole. Chaos, screams. Someone grabbed my arm. I didn't know who, didn't care. We ran. The hallway stretched endlessly, twisting, shifting, turning impossibly in directions I didn't remember. The asylum was changing around us, closing in, refusing to let us leave. Then the stairs. I lunged for them, scrambling upward, my lungs burning. Behind me, the footsteps followed, relentless, hungry. We burst through the basement door, but the asylum had changed. The hallway was different, longer, darker, wrong. The exit should have been here, but it wasn't. Instead, the walls were lined with portraits, not paintings. Photographs, black and white, faded, all of them patients. And then I saw it. A new photograph, fresh, still developing. US. I couldn't breathe. I stared at the photograph, my own terrified face staring back at me, still fading into view. The others saw it too. Brian reached for it with a trembling hand, but the second his fingers brushed the surface, a scream tore through the hallway. Not human, not animal, something else. The air shook around us, an invisible force slamming into my chest. The walls groaned, the ceiling creaked, and from somewhere deep within the asylum, something howled. "We need to go," I shouted. I turned, and the hallway was different again. No doors. No way back. Just a long, endless corridor stretching forward into darkness. And then, at the far end, it stepped into view. The figure from the basement. No longer a shadow. No longer distant. Now, I could see it. Its body was wrapped in a tattered asylum uniform, the fabric stained and torn. Its limbs were too long, its fingers twitching, nails cracked and blackened. But its face was missing. Just smooth, stretched flesh where its eyes and mouth should have been. And yet, I heard it speak. "Stay." The words slithered through my mind, crawling under my skin like something alive. I staggered back, my vision blurring. My head pounded, the walls warping, the air turning thick as tar. I felt something tug at me, pulling me forward toward it. No, I forced my body to move, to fight against whatever was pulling me in. And then a hand grabbed my wrist. "Brian, run," he screamed. We ran. I didn't know where we were going. The hallways twisted, stretched, shifted beneath our feet. The asylum refused to let us go. The lights flickered. Everywhere, doors slammed shut as we passed. And behind us, it was coming. I could hear the heavy, wet sound of its movements, the sickening crack of bones shifting beneath flesh. Then, ahead. A door. Not just any door. The main entrance. I didn't stop to think. Didn't question why it was suddenly there. I lunged, shoving against the rotted wood. The others followed, crashing into me. And for a split second, I thought we weren't going to make it. But then, the door gave way. The world ripped apart, and we were outside. The night air hit me like a shock. Cold. Real. I collapsed onto the overgrown pavement, gasping for breath. My body felt wrong, heavy, like something was still clinging to me. The asylum loomed behind us, its windows dark, its halls silent. It looked Normal.as if none of it had happened.as if it was just an empty, forgotten ruin. Brian sat beside me, shaking. He cut himself off? His eyes darted to the camera in his lap. He lifted it, turned it on. Checked the footage. Nothing. Just static. No asylum. No basement. No figure. Nothing. Brian looked at me, his face pale. It didn't record. I didn't answer, because, in that moment, I knew it wasn't just the footage that was missing. The others, they were gone. I turned, my stomach twisting. Brian and I were the only ones on that pavement. The rest of the crew had never made it out. It's been 3 days since we escaped at least. I think we escaped. Brian refuses to talk about it. He won't answer my calls, won't answer my messages. The last time I saw him was the night we got out. He was sitting on the curb, staring at his camera like it had betrayed him. I don't blame him, but I've replayed it all 1,000 times in my head. The asylum, the whispers, the thing in the basement, the missing footage, and the missing people. I know they were real. I know we weren't alone. But when I checked my notes, my emails, my messages, there was no record of them. No texts, no contracts, no sign they had ever existed. I went to the police, told them everything. They looked at me like I was insane. There was no abandoned asylum, they said. The building had burned down in the 1950s. There were no missing people, because those people had never existed. And yet, when I dream, I hear them screaming. Tonight, I decided to check the footage one last time. I knew it was pointless. I knew it was all static, but as I scrolled through the corrupted files, my stomach turned, because there was one recording left. A single frame, shaky, blurred, but clear enough to see the asylum's main hallway, and in the center of the frame, a figure, tall, gaunt, wrapped in tattered cloth, and as I stared, my blood ran cold, because this time it had a face. My face, and it was smiling. The asylum took them, took the footage, took everything, but it left me. Or maybe it just hasn't finished with me yet. What would you do if you found yourself trapped in a haunted asylum? Leave a comment below and don't forget to subscribe for more terrifying stories.